basically, I was recording this podcast with a guy called Trading Bear. This was about a year ago now, Wes. And we were talking about, in football index terms, what happens if like a player dies, right? Like what happens if they're wiped off the face of the earth. And my scenario that I posed to my co-host at the time was, let's say, for example, Todd Cantwell gets kneecapped, right? What would happen to his price? Long story short, I recently read a book around that time about making clickbaity sort of titles to your podcasts, and I titled the podcast Todd Cantwell Gets Kneecapped. And, you know, like, I didn't think that was a big deal. And I get this message about, like, 2 hours after the podcast goes out, and it's from a guy called Jordan Cantwell. And Jordan says to me, John, you gave me a heart attack. I thought my brother had been kneecapped. I listened to your show and I was like, Jesus, it's a small world. You can't just go saying that people have been kneecapped. So it was a bit of a lesson. But yeah, so that let me know that Jordan Cantwell was listening to my show. I bring this up, and this is a relevant story because it's funny. I actually asked him last week about footballers who play FPL, and we're going to touch on that for like literally 5 minutes, maybe later in the podcast, Wes.
Yeah, so we've found a list of players who, well, actually someone sent it to me on WhatsApp, so I should give them a shout out, so thanks for that. So yes, a list of sort of current players who are playing FPL, which is always sort of conflict of interest, and then there's some former players in there as well, so yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
But it's funny, it's a real coincidence, because you said to me just before we recorded, like, do you want to just talk about this week? And I was like, Wes, you wouldn't believe it. I was thinking, like, my only contact in the footballing world who might have a clue about this, I was like, I messaged your man Jordan like last week, like 8 days ago, asking pretty much the question: do footballers play FPL, and how to like biases in teams work and like picking your opposition. Yeah. But we'll get on to all that. And before we get into the podcast, just a quick plug to Fanslide, the partners of the show. It's the world's first in-play fantasy football game, and yeah, it's basically, the way I like to look at this, Wes, is why would you waste all that research you put in every week for FPL, like hours of reading and decisions for probably 1 to 2 decisions really a week, when on Fanslide you can make multiple decisions over one game. So this week on Boxing Day or Stephen's Day, depending on where you are, they have 2 games. You'll probably be sitting around eating leftover sandwiches, debating life after everything you've put in your stomach over the last 24 hours. But Leicester play Man United and Arsenal play Chelsea, and there's £100 up for grabs in each, so it's the perfect time to download the app and give it a go. Okay, Wes, we're going to get straight into it. For everyone listening, this week we're going to cover a million things. We're probably going to digress an awful lot, but on the kind of hit list before we even get in are obviously the big talking points of the week. Game week 18 and 19. The blank and the double. We're going to be talking about game week 16 wildcards, and defenders have came to the forefront. This might be the first week we don't spend half an hour talking about Spurs, but who knows, it'll probably end up going that way. Wes, before we get into it all, we'll just briefly touch on our past 2 game weeks. We won't bore listeners with the details, particularly of the first one, but just a quick summary so they know how we get on over the past week.
Yeah, so I've had a couple of green arrows. Week 13 was 49 points, pretty low scoring week, I think. And I got a really small green arrow there. So kind of like just sort of a sustained week, I suppose, where you're happy enough without being delighted. And then this week was a good week for me. Got 91 points. Captain Fernandes came off. Having Salah as well was good. My transfer of Rashford in hasn't worked out immediately, which was a bit frustrating in the fact that my logic was sort of sound in terms of thinking that Leeds was a fixture where there was going to be plenty of goals, but he just didn't chip in with one, or even an assist. That was 6, so that was frustrating. But
before we even go through the rest of your team, Heisenberg, I'm going to have to call you out on behalf of a listener here. The LCFC Statman asked us on our last podcast, is Rashford a good option? And we laughed at him and said, no, get Bruno. And here you are with the audacity to tell me that you have Rashford in your team.
Yeah, let me explain and defend myself. So at the time when we said that, he said, is Rashford a good differential? The double game week hadn't been announced, and it was before he had his really nice brace away at Sheffield United. But since then, obviously, my thoughts have changed. I watched the Sheffield United game, saw him obviously score a brace, and the fact that he had a double game week coming up and some nice fixtures. So it's partly based on the double game week in game week 19 that I'm building towards. Obviously, we'll talk on that later, and partly because he was sort of bang on red hot form. And yeah, I'm sorry for dismissing him so soon. I think we did say, yeah, go ahead and prove us wrong, and he did. So yeah, apologies for that. But things change quickly in FPL. You can't be stubborn.
Yeah, there's a lot's changing in that Manchester United team. Even Martial coming out with a big score, and there's a lot to think about there now compared to what there was even just a week ago, two game weeks ago. So yeah, is that the end of the roundup of your team? You see, you got Vardy with a 12-pointer there as well.
Pretty much, yeah. Vardy away at Spurs, and I didn't have any Spurs assets, so I went into that game thinking, Christ, I'm going to get mullered here, but worked out on this occasion. And apart from that, yeah, nothing much to speak about. I've got a problem that we'll get onto later on that's going to be applicable to a lot of players. I've got Chilwell. But yeah, that's enough about my team, I guess. In terms of my overall rank now, this week was a big jump. I went from 224k to 112k, and it's now 8 green arrows on the bounce. So in general, I'm happy with how my team's going.
You're running away with it. I better go buy some paint.
Yeah.
For new listeners, we have got a forfeit in place. Whoever finishes lower out of me and Wes at the end of the season has to draw a portrait of the other, paint a portrait of the other, and display it in our downstairs bathroom for 1 month with no prior notice to our girlfriends. Or maybe, I don't know if you're married to your girlfriend or anything, Wes. But
I am married, and she's found out about it because my brother-in-law. Oh, no. My brother-in-law listens, and he let her know in certain terms. And also, I forgot to shout out my sister-in-law last week because she was also with the kids, and she was listening to the pod. She was unhappy she didn't get a shout out, so here's your shout out.
Fair play. I love it. It's a lovely family feel now. I like it.
It is.
They're probably thinking, like, Wes, what are you talking to this degenerate Irish man once a week for? This gambling reprobate. Anyway, game week 13, I got away with 57 points, which was, as you said, it was a low-scoring game week.
Nice.
My game week rank was like 500k, which was decent.
Yeah.
There was no real standout performers, but I had returns across the board, no double digits. Martinez in goal, I think, was one of the nicer parts of that week.
Yeah.
And then this week, which people will care a little bit more about, but probably not much at all, Martinez with another 6 points.
Nice.
Do you know what? Bruno captain. I had Salah. I had Grealish. My forwards did very little for me. Son did nothing either. But what crippled me this week from going on for a big score, not just Spurs and Bamford missing a couple of chances, but the defence. I only had 2 playing defenders, one of which was Chilwell. The other one was Walker-Peters. Lewis didn't get the start. Lamptey didn't get in. I have Mitchell. The defence is where I need to look at. But
yeah. So that's kind of a little. It is unlucky because you did have 4 playing defenders. Like, well, on paper, you'd think that Lewis and Lamptey would start, but they didn't. So you ended up with 2. So I guess the lesson there is upgrade Mitchell as soon as possible in terms of that would have covered you. But it is unlucky to miss 2 out of 4 playing defenders and then also have Chilwell. Basically, he might as well have missed out, mightn't he? Because 1 point after 8 minutes is pretty useless.
Yeah, well, it's a high point per minute ratio when you look at it that way.
Yeah. He absolutely smashed it.
So, look, what we normally do each week is, because both our teams are very similar but also quite different, what we've been doing the last couple of weeks, and I think it works well because it gets us round the houses and round all the kind of big topics, is just briefly looking at maybe not just future changes but talking points within our team. So I think one we both have in common to start, and it's the one on the end of everyone's lips, tongues, I don't know what the saying is, there's some sort of saying there, is
that'll do.
That'll do. Chilwell. Neither of us have James, but Chilwell and James, the 2 Chelsea defenders, it's one of the biggest topics of the week. We'll get into the heavier stuff a bit later, i.e. double game weeks, blank game weeks, etc. But Chilwell and James, there's people who have both of these ways.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are plenty of people who have got both, and it was a strategy, it was 2 players that I would have been happy to own both of them before this game week came out. So obviously people thought Reece James was fit, but then I think he was injured after or it was announced that he might be injured after the deadline, so nothing you can really do there. But in terms of how to play it going forward, it does depend on your squads. So just bringing it back to my team, for example, if you have got 5 playing defenders and you're happy to carry Chilwell, then maybe you can do that and play. So for example, at the minute I've lined my team up for next week and I've got Balbuena sitting on my bench, but he has got Brighton at home. So, if Chilwell's only going to miss the 1 or 2 games, can I get away with having the likes of Balbuena, Dallas and Robertson this week? I'd be pretty happy to go with that. It leaves my bench pretty thin, but if I get a bit of luck and my other defenders start, then I'll be happy enough. I've also got Lamptey sitting there on the bench with West Ham away. Again, not the worst fixture in the world. So I will have at least one bench defender. So for my scenario, I could potentially afford to carry Chilwell. That won't be. I won't do that if news breaks that he's out for 4 weeks, and this thinking can also be applied to James, by the way. So depends on the news that breaks in terms of how long they're going to be out for. If they're out for the foreseeable, if either of those players are out until the double, if they're going to miss the double game at 19, then they're absolutely useless. Then you might as well get rid of them straight away as a priority because they're fairly expensive for defenders, especially Chilwell. But if they're only going to miss 1 or 2 games and your squad's solid, then I'd possibly hold. So again, for your situation, John, if you're carrying Mitchell and then obviously Chilwell, and you've also got the likes of Lamptey, who's a bit unreliable, then you might be looking to get rid of Chilwell, even if he's only going to miss 1 or 2 games. Is that what you were thinking?
Well, my thinking's this way: is I've basically got Martinez, a really solid keeper. In the midfield, I've got Grealish, Salah, Fernandes, and Son. I think Grealish looks like he's going to be like he is. I know he's not young.
Amazing.
He's mid-20s, but honestly, he is one. Honestly, and this is a big statement. Wes, are you ready for this? And I'm going to get lambasted. He is definitely in my top 5 players to watch. On the planet, probably, and that's a can I say that? I probably can't say on the planet. In the Premier League, top 5, top 3 maybe. Easily. He's just so good. He doesn't make mistakes. He just gets the ball, runs at people, gets past them, makes an accurate pass, or gets tripped up. That's what he does, and he does it over and over. He blows me away every time, and I'm kind of past the point of hating him because he didn't declare for Ireland. I'm just kind of really fanboying over Jack Grealish. Yeah, he's just an outstanding player. So
good to watch. Like I say, I don't even have him in my team, but I watched the last game against West Brom, and he created chance after chance, and even in the stats as well, he created 8 chances, which was like a joint record along with Bruno Fernandes for an away game.
It's the decision making.
Yeah, it's so good, and he's running with the ball. Like he's so fast with the ball. You put say maybe over 100 meters versus a really fast player like I don't know, Walcott or whatever. Or another really fast player, then maybe he wouldn't win. But if you got Jack Grealish to run 50 metres with the ball against any other Premier League player, I can't think of any player off the top of my head who would beat him. So his pace is deceptively quick. Like you say, his decision making's getting better and better. He's creating chances. I guess he could up his goals if he wanted to be considered, elite level, up there with the real world-class players out there. But that's just being picky.
If El Ghazi would get off penalties.
Yeah.
He'd be the full package.
Yeah, but no. In terms of watching football matches, Grealish is right up there. And in terms of an FPL asset, he's still obviously I took him out to fit Salah in the other week, so I definitely about 3 weeks ago now. So I definitely don't regret that move, because at the time obviously Villa had their blank, then he did nothing in the next game. But in terms of is he a good FPL asset, absolutely, really good. And I'm jealous that I can't squeeze him in right now.
I just want to pull you up on something there, Wes. You've literally whipped out a stat from about 10 years ago because you've been on FPL for so long. When you thought of fast players in the Premier League, you thought of Theo Walcott.
Yeah.
It just shows, You didn't say Adama Traore, Daniel James, Mane, St. Maximin, Raheem Sterling.
All probably faster.
Theo Walcott was the first to come to your head. It's quite...
Because Theo's just that sort of player that it was always like he's got that pace, but could he use it? So the pace thing was always sort of thrown at him, I think. So I guess it's in my head, whereas the other players have...
No, he is. He's the stereotypical lightning fast player. But in fairness, he's come back this season a bit. But I'm derailing us here as best I can. Where was I? Midfield looks strong. I've got Son and Kane then, aside from those 3. And, Souček was the other midfielder who's a solid kind of holder. The Son and Kane thing, they've got great fixtures coming up. I'm going to stick with Calvert-Lewin and of Bamford. Wonderful. So what I'm getting at here is the whole squad is strong apart from the defenders. So I'm really tempted to go Chilwell out, take a bit of cash, and either go Mitchell up or Lewis up, and get 2 solid enough defenders in and maybe build towards that game week 19.
So in terms of your transfers now, and what everyone should be thinking about their transfers is they should be playing their transfers as per their strategy. So there's a good... I'm going to retweet a tweet from the FPL Double Up account. So when you listen to this pod, go to the FPL Double Up Twitter account, see a retweet there from Fantasy Football Hub, Will. So Will's the founder of Fantasy Football Hub, and he's created a graphic, which is basically a flow chart, is that what you'd call it? Which is showing which way your squad should go depending on your current team. So again, I'll bring it back to my own team. I've got a lot of players who have a double in game week 19. So therefore, I'm going to continue with that, and I'm going to bolster my squad now. So that's the reason I brought in Rashford last week, was because he has good short-term fixtures. So I didn't neglect the fixtures sort of, over this Christmas period. But I also looked at the fact that he has a double and De Bruyne doesn't. So I freed up some cash. I then used my other transfer to get in Robertson, who again has good fixtures in the short term and has a double. So I've got 12 out of 15 double game week players. And I'll be using my next few transfers on the likes of Lamptey, who doesn't have a double. I'll also tweet out a picture, which is a screenshot from Ben Krellin, who's also a part of Fantasy Football Hub, which is basically showing all the teams who have a double game week and all the ones. And it's very important to notice that all those players that do have a double game week also blank the week before. So for my squad, it makes perfect sense to use my free hit chip in game week 18. Whereas for your squad, John, obviously you've got Kane and Son. If you want to keep them longer term, maybe you could flip it and maybe you could do you could actually free hit when it's the double game week in 19, and you could continue to bring in players with a single game week in week 18, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you might be targeting teams from the other 10 teams have a double and 10 don't. So you could be targeting the other 10 teams with your transfers. So that could be a good strategy for you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to make that decision. I'm probably going to have to sit down and count them up. And this is actually quite funny, Wes, because this shows the difference. Like for me, I've sort of said in our first episode or two, for like doubles and blanks and stuff, I kind of play it by ear, and 2 or 3 weeks away, maybe a week away, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll start planning for this. Whereas this has been in the back of your head from even before this episode.
Yeah.
And genuinely, it's those things that elevate your rank and make you do much better, because this is just optimizing the game at its finest. So you've done them as you've counted your players, whereas that hasn't even been a consideration of mine.
Yeah, it should be. It's definitely now. So even before these doubles were announced, I knew it was likely West Ham were going to get one. So I used a free transfer that was going to burn otherwise to do Mitchell to Balbuena. And Balbuena's, hasn't even made my starting lineup for a few weeks, but he's purely there as a cheap player who's going to have a double in game week 19. They're both good fixtures as well, I think. So yeah, I've been building that team up with that in mind. But yeah, depending on where you're at now, so yeah, everyone should be now looking at their team, looking at the fixtures to see who has that double and who has the blank, and see where you have more players, and also assessing, if you've already used some of your chips, which I wouldn't have advised anyway. It's always best to save the likes of your free hit in your bench boost and triple captain for double game weeks. It just makes total sense. So hopefully everyone's still got those, and then you can make a plan according to your squad.
Wes, I never told you. That's all wonderful strategy, and it's almost like I was strategizing for. It looks like last week, without even knowing, I was optimizing for basically playing a really strong blank game week team.
Yeah.
And then on game week 19 free hitting, but I actually solved my Aston Villa keeper problem, which will help me get in an extra Aston Villa player if I do target game week 18 now.
Yeah.
I brought in Forster for, who was Nyland or someone, I don't even remember who it was. So it's good because it means that obviously I could have Grealish plus one other if I do go for game week 18 now. So I think post-pod I'm going to sit down and do the maths and come up with a plan, and maybe make my defender transfers based on that, because there's a couple of defenders there that need to go. And if it depends which way I'm going to optimise, it'll massively impact who I bring in.
Yeah, exactly. And you might as well look at it as well, because you've got so much choice either way, because there's literally 10 teams who double and 10 teams... and those same 10 teams blank. You've effectively, I'm now picking from a pool of teams of 10 teams, but it's still a big pool. They're still all like, amazing Liverpool assets, amazing United assets, Chelsea, and then there's good cheap teams like Burnley, who have got players like Charlie Taylor, West Ham obviously, and then obviously on the other side, your side maybe, you've got Spurs, who've got you can keep Kane and Son, you don't have to worry about transferring them out. You can keep Grealish, you can keep your keeper. So there's already 4. Obviously, the rest of your team, and now obviously Chilwell's got this injury, and you want to free up cash, so you can go Chilwell, who's a player double, and you can get a cheaper player who's more targeted towards game week 18. So by the sound of it, yeah, that's the way your team looks like it's going. And then over the course of, you'll have a good 3 or 4 free transfers to build it. The odd hit here and there, and you can easily get out 11 solid blank game week players. And then in the double game week, you'll have the luxury of picking 11 players who you don't necessarily want for the long term, but you can pick them for the 1 game week. You can lose Kane and Son for the 1 game week if you wanted to have that free hit double game week style team. And that could be a good strategy for your team.
So I suppose bottom line for people listening who aren't maybe too au fait with all this, have a look at your team, have a look at Ben Crellin's chart, which can be found through Fantasy Football Hub, or look at Will's flow chart, and basically decide now or as soon as you possibly can whether you're going to optimise your team around game week 18 or game week 19. It needs to be one or the other. You don't want to be stuck in no man's land. If you want to play like the pros,
you have to decide. You have to decide now, because otherwise, game week, if you wait till like game week 17 or whatever, it's too late because you can't optimize it, and there's just no way of it working really unless you're getting incredibly lucky. So you might as well start now, and you don't have to, like I was saying, because there is 10 teams to choose from, whichever way you go. There's plenty of good options out there. Maybe it's not the exact option you want, but then you've got to change your plan and go for someone who is an equally good option from another team. So go to at FPL Double Up. You'll see a retweet from FFH Will, which is going to really help you. Retweeted that now as we're talking, so that will be there for people. And I'll also post that screenshot I was talking about the fixtures, so everyone can see.
So whereas another big topic of the week has been wildcards. Wildcards game week 16. Wildcards looking forward to game week 18 and 19. It's all about wildcards, and a lot of those questions come in through our Twitter. You put out for questions last night, I believe, and we got the biggest response we've got so far. We also had our best week for listeners. So genuinely, a big thank you to everyone for submitting questions, for listening, for subscribing, the reviews. There's actually a ton of reviews there. We didn't talk about that, but it's really helping us keep the podcast going and making the questions make the podcast, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to echo that 100%. The reviews coming in are amazing. People texting me like compliments about it, which is brilliant. People obviously like reaching out on Twitter for questions. Again, thank you so much. And just for listening. We're really happy to see it growing. We love doing it, and we're glad that it's obviously resonating with people.
What I love about this podcast compared to other ones I've done is other ones I do, I have a guest every week, a different guest. Whereas this one, it's nice having a co-host and like someone to kind of just. Yeah. So you don't have to do the whole small talky introducing yourself to someone each week. You just kind of come on and chat shit about FPL.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that sort of relationship building, and just to do it every week and ripping each other when we see fit, like you did back with me with Rashford.
Yeah, exactly. But if people get questions in their heads and they want to send them to us, and they can't be arsed hemming in hand and looking around for the Twitter post, well, it's obviously amazing, and do try and target that Twitter post because it helps us. Just send us a message, tag us on an Instagram post, tag us over here, tag us over there, that we'll get to your question as well. And the last thing I'll say on all that, this is turned into a mid-podcast plug. This is the first time we've caught these people with one of these. The last thing I was going to say on all that is go and tell a mate about this podcast. You definitely have mates that play FPL. Do us a favour, drop it in the WhatsApp group, drop it in the Facebook Messenger group. Say, lads, I found this podcast, I'm enjoying it. Because word of mouth is everything in this game. And Wes, I think that's it from plugging ourselves. It was more of a thank you, but
a thank you / don't know what it was, a plug. But
it was a plug disguised as a thank you. I shouldn't have told them that. I was meant to just pretend it was a thank you. God damn it!
It was a thank you. It was.
Anyway,
wildcards. Yes,
wildcards. Talk to
obviously,
me.
I haven't got it, and I'm in the fortunate position where it doesn't matter too much because. Fortunate / planned to have all these double game week players, so I'm okay. But if you don't have as many double game week players and you want to follow a strategy that I outlined for my team, which I think is the best strategy if possible, it is squad dependent, but if possible, and you've got a wild card, I'd be using it maybe now or ideally in week 16, which is the last time you can use it. I'd then be bringing in a shitload of double game week players. So those, go check out. If you don't know the fixtures, I've literally just tweeted from FPL Double Up, and that's got a really nice sort of table of all the teams who have got a double. So focus your transfers on players from teams like Leeds, Man United, West Ham, Chelsea, etc., Liverpool. They all have doubles. And I'd be building a double game week team, and I'd be using my free hit in week 18. It's as simple as that. That's what I'd be doing if I had a wild card.
Yeah. That there's not more to be added there. If you had a wild card, that's
Yeah.
obviously optimal. I don't have one either.
No.
I'm kind of stuck in no man's land here. I think my squad's very much in between. And
It's like a lot of squads, yeah.
I'm going to have to go and do the maths. But as you say, Wes, it's this heads up 4 game weeks in advance.
Yeah, there's a lot of time now.
That's 4 free transfers plus whatever you have in the bank plus potential point hits.
Yeah.
It's very doable.
Yeah, another one I want to, it's like a slight variation on the one. So say if I've got 12 double game week players, right? But say if you only had maybe 7 at this stage and you're panicking a little bit. If I had 7 double game week players, what I'd do is I'd still free hit in week 18, but then in game week 19, I'd use my triple captain chip on the likes of Salah or Fernandez, and I'd just get up. I wouldn't worry about trying to get 15 double game week players. I'd just get up to the 11 mark. So yeah, if you've got 7 double game week players, 4, like you said, 4 free transfers or whatever it is up until game week 19, including the one you get in game week 19. Obviously, you can't count game week 18 because of the free hit. But yeah, say if you had 6 or 7 double game week players, you can use your free transfers to get up to the 11 double game week players, or maybe 9 or 10 double game week players, plus the likes of, if you're a really big fan of Kane or Son, you could keep those players in. And you can have a really solid team, use your triple captainship that week, and then later on in the season, there will be further double game weeks. I think it's around maybe double game week 26. So you can use your bench boost on a double game week later on in the season. So yeah, don't panic if, you might be sitting here listening to me thinking, Wes has got 12 double game week players. I'm nowhere near that. But like I said, if you've got 7, you can do a similar plan to me and just flip the bench boost and triple captain round. Use your triple captain in week 19 and get a really good 11 for double game week 19.
I have to say, this has probably been our most technical podcast to date, but for anyone who's getting a bit lost, I would 100% recommend sticking the podcast on while looking at the charts that we're talking about, or looking at your team even, because it's way easier visually. Because even now you've got me thinking, Wes, I should maybe, based on my team, with my 2 free transfers in the bank, the 4 I'm going to gain, I could easily get 11 players for game week 19, free hit 18, have the double game week with a triple captain, and save the bench boost for like game week 26 or whenever, because that'll be a nice wee kicker to have there that most people will have burnt it.
Yeah.
But I suppose they'll probably be triple captain in them, but I think bench boost is probably
a good plan,
preferable.
yeah. But it sounds of your team, that's a perfect plan in terms of you've got the likes of Kane, Son, Grealish, etc. So yeah, perfect.
Wonderful. Well, will we move on from game week 18, 19, wildcards, all that stuff, or is there anything else you wanted to throw in before we do?
I think we've covered it all off, but yeah, the main takeaway is look at the players in your team and count, and just literally count, and then yeah, like you said, maybe use 2 screens if you can, a laptop and a phone. Go to the FPL Double Up Twitter and look at the tweet I retweeted from Will. Look at the fixtures I posted in a nice easy screenshot, which shows the fixtures, and then you literally count players which way you want to go, and then you nail down a plan and you stick to it for the next few weeks. And like I said, it should be pretty, most teams will have at least 5, 6, 7 double game week players, 4 or 5 free transfers or whatever it is. So you should be able to get to at least 9 double game week players with a couple of good singles. Or like you said earlier, John, take a few -4s, it's not the end of the world. And therefore you can at least do the triple captain style strategy. Or if you're like me and you already have a lot of double game week players, just follow my strategy and go for the big double game week.
Great way. So that's all the heavy talk out of the way. We move on now to some. I actually am looking forward to this conversation. It's more about just players that have kind of emerged in the last couple of weeks that really haven't been on our radar. I'm going to give you an interesting little thing, which is probably the least interesting of this whole section, but this was Trent Alexander-Arnold's highest scoring game week of the year, of this season. 14 game weeks it took him to score 9 points. What odds would you have had on that going into this season? What odds? That's like Leicester winning the Premier League.
Yeah, you'd be expecting, especially he was one of my favourite players to have in FPL. He's one of my favourite players to watch, a bit like Grealish. I just thought he was running the show for Liverpool from right back. His deliveries were the way his passing range and his crossing range, and some of his shots were next level. But yeah, this season he's had a bit of a dip. He's had a little bit of he's had a little injury as well, hasn't he? But even before that injury, he wasn't the sort of FPL asset that we'd all come to know and love, for a few reasons. Mainly because Liverpool were conceding a lot of goals. Robertson, there was a tactical tweak where Robertson was there, much more attacking from A, open play, and from B, he was taking a lot more set pieces. Like Trent used to have a monopoly over the set pieces, so every corner. If Van Dijk was heading it home, it was a Trent assist. Well, maybe not every corner, but a lot of corners. Now Robertson takes the majority, and that can be backed up by stats. And like indirect free kicks, Robertson is on a lot. I think they like outswingers, Liverpool. So depending on which side. And like I said, the open play thing, Robertson was definitely, on heat maps and touches in the box and stuff like that. He was a lot further forward. So, and then the price tag, obviously, for Trent, he was like 7.5. He wasn't getting them any clean sheets or attacking returns. So it was like, what's this guy doing in my team all of a sudden?
Well, they're the same price now, both at 7.2, but
yeah,
they're coming into a lot of people's thoughts again. A lot of people removed them.
A lot of people are talking about the double up there.
A lot of people are talking about getting at least one of them back.
Yeah,
again.
I've got one. Yeah, exactly. I've got one back. They've got West Brom at home this week. They've got decent fixtures. They've got a double. They look like they're flying again, obviously, with a 7-0 against Liverpool. Robertson's a bit of a bonus magnet because in that game you wouldn't be expecting, he got a clean sheet and an assist, but there was like Mane, Salah, Firmino who all scored big, but Robertson still nicked a bonus point, so that's encouraging over the likes of Trent. But yeah, some people are talking about the double up. I mean, if you can afford it without detrimenting your team, it could be nice for sure for this next sort of 4 or 5 weeks.
Did someone say double up?
Here we go.
Hey. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, we haven't spoken about double ups enough. That's literally why the pod's called FPL Double Up for this reason. And also from Liverpool. And I put him in a category a bit like Rashford and Martial in a way that they were kind of Rashford, Martial and Firmino. If you'd have asked me 2 game weeks ago, should I bring these players into my team? I'd have said no. Now I'm saying yes, because obviously the doubles have been announced. Now they're showing a bit of form. Obviously Rashford's off the back of a couple of goals, not last week, the week before. Martial's off the back of, I think it was 3 assists against Leeds and a goal the week before. Firmino is off the back of a late winner against Spurs, and then 2 goals and an assist against Palace. So Firmino's one of the, he's been lacking confidence in front of goal while still kind of playing well in the link-up play. Now he's back to maybe having that confidence again, and he is a cut price option for a sort of Liverpool asset. He's only around 9.2, I want to say. So yeah, all these players are good options now for the double, and Martial again has been absolutely, he had a good season last year for certain stages, and then this season's just been, an absolute no-no, but now he's back and he's an option. So options emerge all the time in FPL and also disappear.
And we're speaking of people popping up, I mean, there can only be one man at the forefront of your mind at the minute. Scott McTominay with an 18-pointer, 2 goals and an assist.
Yeah,
absolutely
brilliant.
Outstanding from the young Scotsman.
Unreal.
He is Scottish, isn't he? He definitely is Scottish.
Yeah, Scottish, yeah.
And actually, all jokes aside, that one kind of is a joke. El Ghazi popping up for Aston Villa on penalties, 5.7 million, 2 goals, 3 goals in 3 games now.
Yeah.
Starting to look like a half-decent option. Now, the fixtures aren't great, but if you are going to optimise around the kind of the aim for the blank game week with 11 players... He's an option because he is a Villa player.
Yeah. And if you've got a wild card left to use in 16 and you want to take a punt for a player just for, 1 week, he could be a definite great shout.
And outside of them, there are other ones who've had a couple of solid weeks. It was nice to see Traore get off the mark for Villa. He hasn't really, he's had a very stop-start season, but definitely a promising player. I believe he came from Lyon, and he was pretty good over there. But, there's a lot to be considering, and I think the big point of this whole little segment is that, players who are nowhere near on your radar, as you've already said, Wes, really can come up out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere, particularly the likes of Martial. He hasn't really got the game time this year. A lot of that down to a red card, a lot of that down to Cavani earning himself some game time. And same with Firmino. Firmino's kind of been on the back burner because Jota came in, and Firmino has been playing, but strategically and how Liverpool were playing, they weren't playing as well. Number one, number two, maybe he wasn't in as many advanced positions. He was more kind of the false nine, kind of dropping a bit deeper. He was kind of the guy who made the pass before the pass that got the assist and stuff. But now he's really coming into Firmino of old. So there's a million other players like this who are going to keep coming out of the woodwork. There's Tammy Abraham with a 13-pointer. He'll definitely get some more game time and a couple of decent fixtures.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful. And you made a joke about McTominay, but if you're not, some people play FPL and they're not that into football, they might not realise that McTominay is a defensive midfielder, and that was, well, unless there's some sort of radical transformation in his game, that was definitely a one-off. He kept bursting into the box, but he's not a player that in most games is going to score you points. And likewise, other players you've got to watch out for who have done well recently will be players like Giroud and Tammy Abraham. So obviously they both play for the same team. They're both strikers. Tammy Abraham got a brace last night, but before then had been dropped for a couple. Giroud scored, 4 in the Champions League, came back in for a few games. But players who come back into your radar, sometimes you have to think them through, and they're still not good options. So I won't be going near Abraham or Giroud because they're both rotation risks. They could even play Werner through the middle, and the likes of Pulisic and Ziyech in the wide positions or whatever, and therefore they both miss out. But yeah, they're both going to share game time. Giroud, with his age especially, isn't going to play 90 minutes every week, and as soon as he stops scoring the odd goal here and there, he will get dropped like he did last night. So yeah, people will pop up, and it's just whether then you've got to start again questioning it. Okay, they've popped up, they're back on form, but are they still good options? And then you consider fixtures, then you consider, are they rotation risk, blah blah blah.
And that's it. Like, there's so many of these players at the minute this week who are traps, and the ones that are traps and ones that are actually decent picks, we won't know that for some time. But even like Thiago Silva there, popping up with a goal, again a 14-pointer. I'm not saying Thiago Silva's a trap, because a lot of people are going to need to pivot from their Chelsea defender maybe to another Chelsea defender or not. Yeah. But if you've got two of that back line that's been relatively solid out, do you want to go for a centre back? A lot of people are going to Zuma. Maybe you do, but a lot of people, like the casual people who don't really look into it a bit more, might go. They might have that recency bias. Yeah. See the 14 points from Thiago Silva and just go, I want Thiago Silva, and not look at the underlying stats or the underlying sort of numbers for the season. So there's a lot to that. Yeah. There was another point I wanted to make there on this, but it's completely slipped my mind. So Tammy Abraham. Wes, Tammy Abraham, this is what it was.
Yeah, go on.
When I clicked onto him to have a little flick about, he's actually having a really decent season when you look at games that he's played more than a half worth, where he started the game. When he starts the game, I'll run through the games he started. I'll avoid the games he's only got like a sub appearance. So any match here that he's over 75 minutes or something, he got a goal, he got an assist, he got an assist, he got a goal, he got a goal. He blanked against Tottenham in a pretty dismal game. And then on his last 90-minute appearance, he got 2 goals. There's only actually one game that he's got the majority of the match that he's blanked in.
Yeah, so absolutely. So if Abraham became a player who could be guaranteed those minutes, because you do need that. So he got I think he got 1 minute off the bench in week 5 against Southampton. That's just the worst thing ever, because you got no chance of a goal off the bench, really. And if you have started him in your team, your bench player doesn't come on. So yeah, Abraham was an asset at some stages last year, and if there's an injury to Giroud, and Werner, then yeah, Tammy Abraham becomes a player that I'm avoiding to one that I'm seriously considering.
Well, we'll move on. Just a quick segment now about footballers who play FPL.
Yeah, let's have a look.
You have a little table on this, don't you?
Yeah, there's a link from, I think it's on Reddit. Yeah, like I said earlier, someone sent this to me on WhatsApp. So for our listeners, again, I'll tweet this link from the Double Up account, so people can see it. And John McGinn is top for all Premier League football players according to this list, anyway. Assuming they've managed to get everyone. And he has got 3 Villa players. James Justin, yeah, go on.
I was going to say, he had a long time in the sideline last season. Maybe he got hooked on it. Listened to a few of your, I don't know, maybe he was in your Patreon. Maybe he was listening to a few of our friends, our competitors' podcasts. Maybe he's learned how to play FPL properly with all that time on the sidelines.
Maybe so. Yeah, he's doing well, and in his team, he's got himself. He's got Grealish. He's only got Grealish vice captain. He captained Salah this week, and he's got Watkins. So he's staying loyal to his Villa boys. But interestingly enough, James Justin is second out of all the football players, and he's only got 1 Leicester player, and he's got himself, which I like. You got to back yourself, but he hasn't got the likes of Vardy or James Maddison, so I'm not sure if they'll be too happy with that. And then yeah, you see there's some of the West Brom players are in there and the Fulham players, and they've just got 0 players from their own team. Harry Maguire's playing it. He's only got 2 Man United players, and he hasn't even got himself. He's got Fernandes and Shaw, but he captains Salah. So, Man United fans, are you happy that your club captain is making a Liverpool player captain in FPL, and that his vice captain was Gabriel Jesus, who didn't even play, so a Man City player. So there you go, Man United player, Man United club captain, Captain Salah, vice captain Jesus.
Yeah, it's such a delicate one, isn't it? I don't really. It's funny if people listen to our little preamble before the show really kicked off. I happened out of nowhere on the 14th of December to message your man Jordan, and I said, like, do footballers play FPL? Like, are there rules about picking up position, etc.? Like, could you captain KDB if you were playing for Norwich and you were against Man City? Do you know? And he was like, he didn't think it's that deep. He knows footballers who play it and enjoy it a lot. And I was like, I wonder what the etiquette with it is for, like, it's like, you know, like, you can't bet when you're a footballer. You can't bet that you'll lose 2-0. So, like, it's not the same, but it's kind of like,
it's similar.
Can you go betting? Yeah, like, it'd be hard not, like, if you played for West Brom, it would be hard not to captain Harry Kane against yourself. But if you're a defender, is that kind of like, there's something dirty about it?
And you're kind of mugging your own team off. You're basically saying that Kane's got the easiest fixture this week and he's going to pummel us. And I'm a defender of that team, but I'm still going to captain the guy who I'm trying to stop scoring. Obviously, I know that they don't maybe take it seriously as seriously as, you know, us or people who listen to the pod, but still at the same time, it's definitely a conflict of interest. But I'm glad they play it though. It is good fun.
I was saying to you before we recorded, like, how sad a little man I am in the bubble I live in. I genuinely sometimes, when I seen, like, I don't know if it was last week or a few weeks ago, I think, Raheem Sterling scored a pretty late goal and he looked so relieved and happy, and I was kind of thinking to myself, I'm pretty sure it wasn't like a game-winning goal. You know, it wasn't like a pivotal goal, but he looked so happy, and I was thinking, like, do you know, he definitely had captained himself. This is a relief. Do you know, his team isn't gone down in flames this week. He's managed to get the captain points on his goal. And then I caught myself thinking, like, what on earth are you on about? This is a guy who's worth tens of millions trying to fulfill his dream and legacy. He doesn't give a fuck about FPL. And I'm sitting there with my little echo chamber that is Twitter being like, oh, these guys love it. Do you know?
Yeah, no, yeah.
I don't know if that is just me or if anyone else has thought that. If you've thought that before, let me know. And if I'm just a crazy bastard, let me know that as well.
One of the, we'll move on for this section in a second, but one of the player who, a former player now of the Premier League, Nicholas Bentner, and his FPL team name is Draft Lord. So I think that's some sort of Lord Bentner joke there that he's making, and he's got a big score. He's got 928 points overall, so he's doing well.
Jeez, that's outstanding, isn't it?
Yeah,
I like James Justin's team name is Just in Time.
He's playing on that one, but yeah, Lord Bentner is in the top 10k of players overall in the world, and obviously for sort of seasoned FPL players, the sort of top 10k is where you want to be aiming every season. Getting there is another matter because it's, you know, really, really difficult to get into the top 10k. But yeah, he's currently ranked around the 9k mark, so he's doing phenomenally well.
Here's one for you, a little side tangent. The whole top 10k thing.
Yeah.
It's quite often in people's profiles and stuff like, oh, 6 top 10k finishes, this top 10k.
Yeah.
As FPL grows, how attainable will that be? Will top 10k become top 25k? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it already has, especially because, you know, top 10k is such an antiquated thing from like 5-6 years ago, but since then the game's exploded in terms of numbers. The amount of information has exploded to help players who wouldn't know stuff. Even the FPL website gives this season, it's giving like team news on the FPL. Like when you look at the fixtures, it has like relevant news, and it now has obviously like the fixture difficulty thing. So all these things in like websites like Fantasy Football Hub, Twitter, etc., like the amount of information and how easy it is to now become better at the game, it makes it obviously much more competitive there. So yeah, I think you should be really happy if you're in the top 50k, even in the top 100k, depending on how seriously you want to take it.
Yeah, I mean, I got, I think, 52 or 53k last season.
Yeah.
And I was happy. Do you know, like, that's like top 1%, I think.
Yeah,
my maths
exactly.
correct.
And it's probably good enough to, you're probably good enough to come, first, second, third in your mini leagues, maybe second or third in your bigger mini leagues.
Yeah, I've competed in a lot of them, won a couple of cash prizes. It was a decent
exactly.
season. And that's all you can ask for. This season, though, it's it's a long old slog trying to get back to kind of, because I'm kind of, do you know when you have an FPL podcast, you kind of want to have a decent rank. There's a bit more pressure this season than there has been any others. And I've had 8 out of the last 11 weeks have been green arrows. And this is actually quite pertinent to that point we talked about with Ash when he was on the podcast. Do you know, green arrows don't mean much, red arrows don't mean much. Like, I'm still at 338k because of 1 week, and it wasn't even that bad a week, but I went from 424, but I lost 200k worth of places with a score of 51. It's like, it's so tight in there. Even my 2 points coming on from the bench this week was 10,000 places. Yeah.
You just want another sort of bit of advice on this sort of topic would be, if you are languishing down in if you haven't got many points, or you're behind in your mini leagues by quite a way, and you're not doing very well in the overall ranks, then still don't panic. You've still got the big scores to come from. If you play the blanks and then doubles well, that's a good time to take advantage. We're still only about a third, just over a third of the way through the season, so there's still roughly 2/3 left of the season, roughly probably 60%. So the majority of the games are still to come. The start of the season is always the hardest in terms of rank as well, because you'll have the luck factor at the start. People can fluke their way into there, but they probably won't remain there. Players like, there'll be lots of players in these top positions that have spunked all their chips early doors. So don't worry about the overall rank at this stage. Just keep playing your game, keep making sensible decisions, keep improving your squad, keep doing all the right things, play the blanks and the doubles, blah, blah, blah. And, but if you do all those things right by the end of the season, you should have a good rank. And obviously, like we touched on earlier, avoiding those traps, but also bringing in those players who have turned from a player you're avoiding into a good option. That sort of thing.
100%. Wes, well, look, will we scan through the questions and see if any of them still need answered?
Let's do it.
I think we've answered most of them. We'll give the people a shout out. FPL SWAT, your question has definitely been answered. Rich FPL, we haven't kind of covered that, but we kind of have. Best players to own for game week 18 and then game week 19. I suppose if we just flick through it quickly, because obviously a lot can change in that time.
So best players, so
for game week 18 and game week 19, well, it all depends on which way you're going.
And your strategy, and also assuming that most people will be having completely different squads for those game weeks, because most people will use a free hit in at least one of those game weeks. And when you use your free hit, you don't need to plan in advance for a free hit. You literally just take... When you play your free hit, you play it that week and you use all the relevant data and the relevant eye tests of watching the most recent games, etc. So I'm obviously going to play my free hit in week 18, but I'm not wasting my time thinking about that squad because, there's literally no point. Injuries could occur, etc., etc. And the whole point of a free hit is you pick it at the time for that 1 week. But best players for game week 19 is probably a better question if you're going to be doubling. If you're going to be attacking the doubles. So I can answer this in terms of, because that's what I'm doing with my strategy. But I don't actually have an answer for that in terms of you've got to stay flexible. There's 10 teams to choose from, whichever way you go in. So
not Fulham is probably my answer. Not Fulham.
Fulham are playing okay at the minute. Their double isn't very good, but they're much improved. They've changed most of their starting lineup from the first few game weeks. They've got some options in there. Cavallero, if he was fit, is only 5.3 million playing up front. Sorry, a 5.3 million midfielder, but he's playing as the lone striker. He's on penalties as well. He looked pretty lively against Liverpool. Lookman's an okay option, and they've got some cheap defensive options. But generally speaking, I know what you mean. Like, you're not going to go in there.
When you look at the double, they've got Chelsea and United. It's kind of like,
it's not a great double at all. Yeah, but in terms of, there's still plenty of options out there, and there's still plenty of big teams. There's Chelsea, Liverpool, and Man United all have a double. And in terms of options from those teams, it's pretty obvious that Fernandes is a standout pick. Salah's obviously a standout pick. Firmino, Mane, Robertson, Trent are all valid options. And likewise with Chelsea, you've got Zuma there, who's a goal threat. You've got there's so many options. West Ham have got a really good double. Burnley have got good fixtures, but not necessarily a good double. But you've got the likes of Chris Wood, who could grab your goal. You've got the likes of Charlie Taylor at the back, Nick Pope in goal. So many options. You can't just make sure you're picking good options. And likewise with West Ham, you've got Fabianski, you've got Cresswell, you've got Kufal, you've got Soufal, I think it's pronounced. You've got Soychek, and then potentially players like Bowen as well. So loads of options from these teams, in all these different price ranges. So yeah.
Who do you think to replace Chilwell, says Lee Carruthers. So Lee's basically saying, right, I'm getting rid of Chilwell, who do we bring in? And again, we'll not give every question the proviso of depends which way you're going, but kind of take it depends which way you're going in game week 18 and 19.
Yeah.
I think there you've obviously got options where if you're trying to go to budget to put that money further up the pitch, great. If you're not, maybe an upgrade to one of those Liverpool lads, if that's what you're looking at. You could go sideways to someone like Zuma. Or as we've already said, you could go budget. What would you be looking at?
So yeah, like you said, it's otherwise we'll be answering every question with depends. But yeah, if we're just going to take that question in isolation, options I like are Vestergaard's only 5 million. He's got great goal threat. He's already scored, I think, 3 goals this season. James Ward-Prowse is on the set pieces, and he's like 6'7". He gets his head on the end of everything. He's not always that accurate, but goals could be flying there. You've got Taylor at Burnley. Again, he got an assist last night. Who else is there? Yeah, Soufal did well a couple of weeks ago. Dallas from Leeds has got 2 goals in the last 2 games. Leeds are conceding a lot, but they've got decent fixtures, and he's obviously a goal threat. So yeah, I think how I always like to pick defenders, and it seems really obvious, but I never really go for the players like Connor Cody might be. Say when Wolves have a good run and Wolves are defending better than they are at the minute. So say maybe last year they're getting clean sheets fine, but there's no goal threat there or assist threat from the likes of Cody. So I always like to get those players who have ideally both. So Robertson's obviously got a lot of assist threat, the occasional bit of goal threat, but he's like a real good chance for an assist. Someone like Lamptey, who's in my team at the minute, Akay's not done brilliantly, and he is a player I'm looking to move out. But in terms of my thought process behind picking him was from open play, he's getting into the box, he's getting crosses off, he's scored against Spurs, he's getting shots away, blah, blah, blah. He can get me attacking returns even if the clean sheets dry up. So that's the type of defender I always look for. Can they get me some attacking returns?
Very good. Grey Cloud with a question that I'm pretty sure has been answered. Tom Hovey, I think your question has been answered. Triple captain on a bench boost to 19. It all depends on a couple of factors which we mentioned. So everyone sit down and have a plan. I think this is the probably one of the harder weeks across the season in terms of planning. This is a week where you need to sit down and do the maths for 15 minutes, and it'll definitely reap rewards.
For sure.
Jamie O'Loughlin, I keep persevering with Werner thinking he'll come good. Am I dumb? Jamie, you're dumb. I did it for a long time at the start of the season. I got rid of him a few weeks ago and it was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah. On Werner, I'd hate to own him at the minute because part of me would be thinking, he's got a double game week coming up, and transfers are pressures at this stage. But at the same time, he's just, if you look at the stats, you can say, he's getting in the right positions, he's getting shots away, he hit the bar last night, he had a really good chance inside the box that the keeper saved with his feet, blah blah blah. But it's just one of those. Okay, it's at the minute he's a player that is just not confident in front of goal essentially, and he's just going to frustrate you. And if he eventually comes good, then good luck to him, and you might have already transferred him out at this stage, but I think you've got to let him go. He got an assist in the last night from a kind of scuff shot, but I wouldn't want Werner in my team. Obviously this could easily come back and bite me. He could score a brace like next week, of course he could, but I still wouldn't change my mind on that. If he scores a brace next week, I'll stand by what I've said here, and I'll say that he's just not an option at that price range. You've got the likes of Firmino coming good now. You've got the likes of Martial at that sort of price range. You've got Danny Ings, who could be an option for the double game week should he be, fit and firing. You've got Vardy, who's a little bit more expensive, who again has a double and is, Vardy's just reliable. You know what you're getting from him season in, season out. He's going to score you goals, and he's even get some assists this year as well. So yeah, the short answer is I would be taking him out, I think.
Yeah, Jamie, I don't know if you've listened to all the episodes, but you might remember me tossing and turning with this one for weeks. Yeah. And I know, and I still know, he has a 20-pointer in him this season. He has a 20-pointer in him this season, and it's going to come some week when he puts those chances away, because this is a guy who quite literally could have been the top scoring forward. He's got 64 points there, and you think of the amount of goals that man has missed. Maybe I'm overstating it, but when you think of the goals and chances that he has missed, the simple passes for assists he's missed, and the bonus points that would have came with that, he could have been one of the top 2 or 3. He could have been, but
100%.
He isn't, and you can always get him back, but you can't get back the points you're missing out on at the minute. So
yeah,
I don't know. What next? There's a lot of questions here. Yassine, Ewan White, Snorri Anderson, who are asking us a lot about the double game weeks and stuff. FPL Corndog, thanks for the question. We've just discussed the best defender options for Brendan Abrahams. Rule of team value in transfers for game week
Good
19.
question.
Are you willing to sell or buy a player if you lose 0.4 million? Meaning sell before game week 19, rebuy right after. So that's from Mark Powell. And I think a few players that this will be quite pertinent with are like Jack Grealish for a lot of people who got on him early and have held him. He's rose a good bit. I think Heung-min Son. There's a load of them. There's a load of players.
So the way I look at this is I have, again, those two examples, Son and Grealish, I've owned at certain stages of this season, and I got on them. I definitely got on Grealish early doors at maybe 7.1, and I think I sold him when he was 7.7. So if I did want to buy him back, I'd lose out financially there. But I'm not looking at sort of that sort of side of it, the game this year at all. I'm thinking that there's always going to be an option. I want points on the board, so I got rid of Grealish for Salah as part of a move that I also removed Kane for Bamford. And that's just because I wanted Salah. He was a good captaincy option for the next few weeks, yada, yada, yada. And I still believe in Grealish as an FPL option, of course I do. But for me, and I might want him back at some stage, but I knew that I wouldn't be wanting him back for a fair few weeks, 6-7 weeks. So I'm not holding on to a player just for that reason of value. If I have to buy him back at a later stage for more money, I'll find a way to do so. And I won't lose any sleep over it at all. So in previous years, I've definitely looked at the money side way too often. I've looked at things like the price rise, like when price rises were going to occur, and jump on them early, and it's kind of bit me in the arse. And I've also done this thing of, if I lose him now, I've got to buy him back for more. But no, this year I'm not playing it that way at all.
Very good. It's definitely something that a lot of people do either over consider or under consider. I kind of have tried to put it to the back of my mind this year, because advice from people like you, and I think General did a podcast at the start of the season with like his rules
General
for the
doesn't
year,
care.
and one of them was like, I don't care, and I'm kind of like, well, if these guys don't care, I don't care either. In saying that though, there was 1 week there, do you know, when Aston Villa and Newcastle's game was postponed, I just said, look, I'm keeping Grealish, because I did have a substantial, I had like 500,000 in him, and I did want them, so for 1 week I was keeping him, do you know?
Absolutely, and that's exactly the point. If you want this player long term, don't be doing it for like so say if you did have this game week 16 wildcard and you wanted to take a 1 week punt, and then you was planning on bringing that player straight back, for 1 week it's not worth it. So if I wanted Grealish back the very next week, I wouldn't have done it, but I was happy to go without, because my midfield I was happy with and stuff like that. So for a 1 week thing, I'd definitely be thinking about the value side of it, because it would be silly to do that. But for anything sort of 3 weeks plus, then I'm just going to let it go. And when I'm pretty sure I will have Grealish again at some point this season, and I'll have to pay the price for that, I'm happy to do so. But yeah, like if for your situation, that exact example you just said, you did exactly the right thing.
Well, Wes, I think that brings us to the end of the podcast. Have you anything else you want to throw in for this week?
No, just another thank you again. I know we did it in the middle of the pod, but I just want to get across how thankful we are that the pod's growing in listener numbers. We're getting more and more questions every week. We're getting more and more people enjoying it. So yeah, just very thankful and loving it.
Absolutely. Happy Christmas to everyone listening. And yeah, give us a Christmas present of a 5-star review. I'd like that wrapped under the tree. But yeah, genuinely happy Christmas to everyone. It'll be a different Christmas to other years. I got the sad news yesterday. Won't be with the family this Christmas. Like a lot of our listeners will be in the same boat, I'd say. So yeah, it'll be a weird one. But look, next year will be all the more bliss, and we can probably have like second Christmas in like 6 months. So that'll be weird. Other than that, Wes, I think people just should definitely, when they're sitting around all lonely on Boxing Day without their family, download Fanslide. Do you know, give it a go. Why not? You're sitting around watching football. That's what Boxing Day's for.
Yeah.
Leicester, Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea. Again, it's free to play. £100 up for grabs, but more bragging rights, and just learn the game for whenever maybe one day there's bigger prize pools involved.
Yeah, and then you can also tweet us some advice, John, because me and you are doing terrible
Fanslide. Yeah, I'm trying. It's hard to adjust, but it's interesting, like the complete change in strategy at times. Yeah,
we just need to learn some better strategy, me and you, and also try and catch up our friend Nash from FPL Hints, who's smashing it. He keeps tweeting about it, and
flying it,
he's just doing really well. So he's nailed it, and that's what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, look, happy Christmas, everyone, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Bye bye. See you later.
You go a second. Set you up with the eye. Good stuff.